Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to I Hate Rock Music. And this video is going to be about a really interesting band. There's not much information on them, but I can kind of fill it in with some of my thoughts about the band Zipper. They came out in 1973. I did a video already on the Lollipop Shop, which was Fred Cole's um, kind of garage punk psychedelic band, which is excellent. Definitely gets the big bucks now. And between 1968, 69, and 3, 4 years later, Fred Cole shows up in this band Zipper in 1973, and they showed up on Wise Eagle, the Wise Eagle record label, and Zipper was working out of Portland by that point. And so the album came out in 1974. It has a pretty cool cover, and again, Fred Cole just on vocals. And so we have Larry Irk on drums, Jim Roos on guitar, Greg Shadow on bass, and then Fred Cole on vocals. And it's really cool. It's very garage sounding, but it has these kind of classic hard rock, heavy proto metal moves from the 70s. And the one thing about it that kind of holds it back is, they put it out on a small label, and the recording is pretty rough, but it gets the job done, and the riffs are really cool, and it's really cool to hear Fred Cole in like a early 70s band that's trying to compete with all the hard rock bands that were around in the early 70s. And this kind of aesthetic that Fred Cole established with the Lollipop Shop that continued into Zipper, of course, continued into Fred Cole's future bands, the Rats and Dead Moon. And by that point, he was playing with his wife Tootie, who's on bass, and then he was not only the singer but the guitar player. So I'm not sure why he waited so long to get involved and become the focal point of the guitar playing in the band. But I got to see the Rats a couple times, and I got to see Dead Moon a whole bunch of times, and it was always a big deal when Fred Cole came up from Portland to play shows in Seattle and being nearby. Of course, they played here a lot. And so when you get to the Rats and Dead Moon, there's definitely more of a somewhat of a punk aesthetic. Um, definitely more of a garage sound. Really great stuff, and of course Fred Cole's vocals are unmistakable. Um, I'm not even going to attempt to describe his vocal style, but there's definitely only one Fred Cole. But so between the Lollipop Shop and then the later Dead Moon, it's really great to have this Zipper album showing Fred Cole getting more in step with what was going on in 71, 72, 73 with these kind of classic, somewhat Zeppelinish hard rock riffs. And there's a lot of tempo changes on the record. It's not all hard rock all the way through. Um, there's some slower tempo numbers, so it definitely slows down in a number of places. But it's really hard to tell. A lot of times with a lot of these obscure records, particularly if they show up on smaller labels, they end up not being recorded that well. And I always kind of do an exercise like take this Zipper album for example, like what would it have sounded like if they'd really gotten a good studio recording, had really gotten a good engineer and quality studio time, and what kind of record would it have been then. But then you also can look at this same Zipper album and realize that the lo-fi aspect of it gives the record a quality that it wouldn't have otherwise, and in some ways that lower quality recording kind of adds to the mystique and charm of the record. But it's definitely one of those ones that's easy to picture done up in a real studio. And once again, as I've talked about in numerous videos, seems like a lot of the guys working for some of these record labels were a little short-sighted, and it would have been nicer if they could have seen the potential of a band like this and really given them some backing and gotten a really well-produced album out of them, because it would definitely be a monster. As it is, it's a great record. It's great having your collection. Really cool cover. The band's a lot of fun. A little sloppy in places, but that's kind of been one of the hallmarks of a lot of Fred Cole's bands, Lollipop Shop, Zipper, Rats, and Dead Moon, all kind of have an endearing sloppiness to them, but it kind of adds to their rock and roll feel, somewhat the same way Johnny Thunder's problems sometimes enhance the music he was doing, sometimes not. But it's also interesting to hear Fred Cole playing in a band like Zipper, where they got a guitar player like Jim Roos, who at the time was kind of a shredder. So there's a lot of wild um, guitar soloing all over the place on this record, which is kind of uncharacteristic of Fred Cole's other work. And so that's kind of interesting to hear in itself. But a really fun band, really cool to hear. Sounds great loud, definitely raw, definitely primitive, definitely a little lo-fi. But records like these are what rock music is all about. So Zipper, as always, the link is posted below. Check them out. Some people are going to find it a little rough, but others of you are going to find all the joys and charms of this record that I do. Zipper, check them out. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching.